Okay, let's unpack this artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
It feels like we're just bombarded daily. New breakthroughs, the future of work. It's almost overwhelming.
It really is like trying to drink from fire hose sometimes.
Exactly.
And that's sort of what we want to do here, right? This deep dive is about cutting through all that noise, finding out what's actually, significant in AI right now, separating the real stuff from the hype.
Precisely. And our guide for this is going to be digital theorist, technology journalist Cal Newport. We're looking at his recent blog post, AI and Work, some predictions.
Right.
So the goal is really to get a clearer picture, a more grounded view of how AI is actually impacting work now and, well, in the near future.
Yeah, so the mission, if you like, is to understand those key shifts where AI meets work and hopefully give you, the listener, some solid takeaways. Figure out what's real versus what's maybe overblown.
All right, so where is AI making a real splash already? Newport mentions that the early buzz, it was all about AI for text production, right?
Yeah, things like writing emails, summarizing meetings, maybe drafting reports, that kind of thing.
And we have seen a bit of that. Newport gives an example. I think it was a retreat organizer.
Using ChatGPT for a summary email, which makes sense for certain, routine tasks.
Sure. But this idea that AI would just take over all our writing, that hasn't quite happened, has it?
No, not really. Newport cites a survey. I think it found only, 5.4% of internet users actually use ChatGPT for emails and letters.
Wow, that low.
Yeah, surprisingly low. It suggests that, maybe writing isn't the biggest problem for most of us in our day-to-day work.
Okay, so if it's not writing emails, what has emerged as a key application?
Well, this is interesting. Newport argues pretty strongly that Smart Search is the real killer app so far.
Smart Search. Explain that a bit. How's it different from just, Googling something?
Right. So instead of just getting a list of links, imagine asking a tool, maybe like the newer ChatGPT or Claude.
Yeah.
You ask it a question, and it doesn't just give you links. It goes out, searches the web, digests the information, and then actually summarizes the key points for you. And the newer models, like GPT-4o, the one that handles images and audio too, it can even give you that info in different ways, like put it in a spreadsheet for you or make a chart. It's a step change.
That does sound pretty different. Like fundamentally different.
It really is. Newport compares it to, say, spreadsheets replacing old paper ledgers or email replacing voicemails and faxes. It takes something we do all the time, typing search terms, and just makes it, he says, magically better, smoother.
And is there data backing this up? Are people actually using it this way?
Apparently so. Surveys are showing, a decent chunk of people, I think it was 27% of U.S. respondents in one survey, already using AI tools instead of traditional search.
27%. That's not insignificant.
Not at all. And think about the money involved. Newport mentions Alphabet's stock price taking a hit when it came out Google searches via Safari were down.
Right, because people might be using these AI alternatives instead.
Exactly. And Google's search ad revenue was $175 billion in 2023? It's a huge market.
Wow. So if you're OpenAI or someone similar becoming the new Google search, that's a massive opportunity.
It seems like a very plausible path to profitability, yeah. Maybe more so than some of the wilder AI dreams we hear about.
Okay, so smart search is definitely one major area. What's another?
Computer programming. That's the other big one. Newport highlights.
Yes. AI helping people code.
Right. Even people with just basic coding skills can apparently build simple apps now. And even more complex stuff gets easier with AI assistance. Like root code, he mentions.
And there are stats on this too, right? Y Combinator?
Yeah, that was pretty striking. A quarter of their winter 2025 startups generated, get this, over 95% of their code using AI.
95%. That seems like a revolution in software development.
It certainly points to a big shift, especially for maybe simpler applications or early stage stuff.
But Newport also brings in a counterpoint, doesn't he? From Judah Diamond.
He does. Diamond, a computer scientist, basically reminds us that we've seen tools before, like HyperCard or Visual Basic, that promise non-programmers could build apps.
Right, the low-code, no-code idea isn't entirely new.
Exactly. And Diamond's point is those older systems always hit a wall when things got even slightly complex or, non-standard, which, let's be honest, real-world software often does.
That's a fair point. Building robust software is hard.
It is. And while maybe some AI skepticism gets pushback, Diamond's caution about the limits seems important. However,
However,
Newport also stresses that professional programmers are using AI tools. A lot. Just maybe not to write entire complex systems from scratch.
More like helpers.
Exactly. Helper utilities, he calls them. Things like GitHub Copilot. They use them to look up library functions, maybe generate repetitive code boilerplate stuff,
Okay.
or handle AI calls within their own code. And the productivity boost is apparently quite real. Newport suggests it's becoming rare for pros not to use these tools.
So it's transforming programming, but maybe more as an assistant than a replacement, especially for complex work.
That seems to be the picture emerging right now, yes.
Okay, so we've got smart search and coding assistants. What does Newport see as the next big thing?
He shifts focus a bit, not just what AI can output, but its ability to understand us. He thinks the next major wave is natural language processing for software interfaces.
So talking to our software.
Basically, yes. Using everyday language to control applications. Microsoft's Copilot initiative, the broader one, not just the GitHub coding tool, is a big push in this direction.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Imagine you're in a spreadsheet. Instead of clicking through menus, you just say, okay, filter out all the rows where column C is less than 100, then sort the rest by column A and make the font bigger.
And it just does it.
That's the vision. And think about the productivity gain there. Suddenly, users who aren't, Excel wizards can access really powerful features just by asking.
Yeah, that could be huge across all sorts of software.
It really could. And interestingly, Newport points out the AI models needed for this, they don't necessarily have to be these gigantic cutting-edge ones.
No.
They could potentially be smaller, maybe even run locally on your device, which means cheaper, more efficient.
So less sexy maybe than, I don't know, robot butlers.
Yeah.
Nice.
Definitely less sexy.
But potentially a dominant way we interact with computers within, 5 years or so?
That's his prediction, a really fundamental shift in how we use software driven by natural language.
It's okay. Search, coding, interfaces. Those seem quite practical, tangible shifts. But what about the really ambitious stuff? Like AI agents that automate whole chunks of our jobs?
Yeah, the agent idea. That gets a lot of airtime, especially for knowledge work. Newport acknowledges the buzz. There are reports, right, about companies like OpenAI thinking about charging businesses like $20,000 a month for specialized bots to do key tasks.
Wow. And you hear people like Elon Musk saying AI-generated robots will eventually provide, most goods and services.
Yeah, right. That's the grand vision. But Newport injects some realism here. He says progress on these truly autonomous agents seems to have, slowed down.
Slowed down. Why?
It ties back to something called scaling laws. The idea that just making AI models bigger and bigger automatically made them much, much smarter.
That was the trend for a while, wasn't it? GPT-2 to 3 to 4.
Exactly. Each leap was pretty dramatic. And the hope, or assumption, was that this scaling would just continue, eventually leading to artificial general intelligence, AGI, which could power these agents.
But that's not happening anymore.
It seems to have hit a plateau. Newport notes that companies are still pouring money into bigger models, but the performance jumps just aren't as big as they used to be.
Oh. Is that why we haven't seen GPT-5 yet?
That seems to be a big part of it, yeah. And Meta apparently delayed their next big model, too. The easy gains from just scaling up seem to be over, for now at least.
So if scaling isn't working as well, what are they doing instead?
The focus has shifted more towards tuning the models we already have, using reinforcement learning, basically, training them with specific feedback.
Like the example he gives of hiring math PhDs.
Exactly. Get experts to train the AI on math problems, give it feedback, and it gets really good at math. You fine-tune it for a specific skill.
And that explains why OpenAI is releasing lots of specialized models now, rather than one supermodel.
Precisely. It's a result of this tuning strategy, but there's a catch.
Which is?
This tuning relies heavily on having the right training data. And for the really complex, bespoke tasks we'd want agents to do in many businesses, that data just might not exist or be easy to get.
Right. Every company's workflow is a bit different, nuanced.
Totally. Which makes it hard to train a general-purpose agent. Newport uses a great analogy. He says the real Turing test for our time would be an AI that can actually manage your email inbox successfully.
That does sound hard.
Incredibly hard. It requires so much context, judgment, understanding, nuance. He doesn't think we'll pass that test anytime soon.
Which kind of brings us to the elephant in the room. AGI and superintelligence.
Yeah.
Are they imminent? Are they just around the corner? Because that's the narrative we often hear from Silicon Valley.
The idea that AI is right on the cusp of this, world-altering disruption.
Yeah, Newport mentioned some pretty wild predictions. Sam Altman saying GPT-5 will be smarter than everyone.
Right, or Dario Amodei talking about future AI, a country of geniuses in a data center.
These are, yeah, they're radical claims, as Newport says.
Especially given what we just talked about, the scaling laws hitting limitations. The reality is they haven't actually built the kind of AI systems these predictions seem based on.
So the focus shifted to tuning existing models instead.
Exactly. And Newport senses this kind of creeping awareness among some AI proponents that, well, maybe they don't have a clear story anymore for how we get from here to superintelligence super quickly.
He mentions Nick Bostrom predicting superintelligence in under 2 years, but with a big if.
Right. Bostrom added the caveat that it needs key unlocks, which basically means we don't actually know how to do it yet.
And Gary Marcus's tweet comparing it to expecting levitation.
Yeah, that was pretty pointed. It highlights how speculative some of this is. Newport also looks at that AI 2027 Doomsday Manifesto.
What was the issue there?
It was quite vague, apparently. It sort of claimed that AI tuned for programming would just spontaneously invent breakthrough AI tech.
That sounds like quite a leap.
A huge leap, like Newport's analogy. It's like watching the Wright brothers' first flight and just assuming interstellar travel is only a few years away. It ignores all the steps in between.
So what's fueling these big AGI narratives then, according to Newport?
He points to three things, mainly. One, the early success of scaling laws was genuinely impressive.
Okay.
Two, you get these demos where models do really well on specific tests or benchmarks, which looks amazing. And three, you have tech leaders making very bold, sometimes sensational statements.
But the bottom line is?
The bottom line, and this is maybe reassuring, is that we don't seem to be on a direct, inevitable path to human level or superhuman AI right now.
Future breakthroughs could still happen, obviously.
Of course. But they'll likely be more gradual, maybe give us more warning, more time to adapt. The idea that, humanity is going to be wiped out by AI in 2030 seems highly unlikely based on current tech trends.
So don't panic about imminent robot overlords just yet.
Probably not. And Newport's final point here is important. The changes that are happening now, smart search, coding help, natural language interfaces, they're already really significant. We should focus on understanding those impacts.
Right. We don't need to wait for superintelligence to see big shifts in the world of work.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's quickly recap this deep dive based on Cal Newport's thinking. Smart search. Surprisingly dominant killer app right now.
Big disruption potential there.
Coding assistance definitely happening. Boosting productivity for pros, but maybe not replacing complex development entirely just yet.
Right. More helper than replacement for now.
Natural language interfaces talking to our software that looks like the next really big wave, potentially huge for usability.
Yeah, possibly a primary interface within years.
But those autonomous AI agents doing our jobs, progress seems to have slowed because scaling laws hit a bump.
Yep. And the tuning approach has limits for complex, unique tasks. The inbox test is still failed.
And AGI, superintelligence. The timelines seem much more uncertain, maybe distant, than the hype suggests. Current tech isn't on a direct path there.
Not an immediate one, no. The focus should be on the real changes happening now.
Which are already pretty exciting and maybe a bit concerning too, depending on how they play out.
Absolutely. It's already a significant transformation underway.
So maybe a final thought for you, the listener. Given how fast smart search and these natural language interfaces are evolving, how might your daily tech interactions change in just the next few years? Seriously, think about it. What skills become more important if talking to your tools is the norm?
Yeah, what does work look like when getting information and controlling software feels more like a conversation? Definitely something to chew on.